Hello, everyone. As usual, I'm Ariana, the host for our webinars, and welcome to today's webinar topic that is pretty essential for anyone to know who's interested in self-defense, and it's about de-escalation and self-defense, as you can see in the title of the webinar. But in today's world, where there are a lot of unpredictable situations, I'm already using my hands a lot. I'm trying to bring them down. But as well, we know it's been sadly becoming more of a frequent occurrence for unpredictable situations to occur, and knowing how to handle and diffuse these moments without escalating them into something that could be potentially more dangerous is very, very invaluable skill to know. In today's webinar, we all want to know and understand how to recognize and de-escalate and avoid potentially harmful situations, and while ensuring your safety and others without resorting to any physical confrontation, hopefully. And tonight we're fortunate to have with us an expert in many fields, especially this field. We have Austin Davis with us again. And if you guys have been watching our webinars or know of the #1 online training company in the country too, Conceal Coalition, then you know how much knowledge, Austin brings. But if you don't know him, I'm just going to give a little very brief intro to him. And Austin's a very seasoned instructor, which I had the pleasure of meeting the other week in person. Finally, we've had so many webinars together, but we got to meet in person, which was pretty awesome. But he has a lot of extensive knowledge and real life scenario training with de-escalation techniques, and he has dedicated his career, maybe I'm right, to helping people laugh and, most importantly, stay safe by teaching them not only how to defend themselves physically, but also know how to avoid conflict altogether, which is why he's the perfect person to guide us to tonight's topic. So we're very thrilled to have him. As always, make sure to submit any questions you have in the comment section, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll get to them during the Q&A. And remember, this webinar is recorded, so you can watch or share this webinar anytime. So if you have to leave later or anything, you can always come back and watch it later. But thank you again, everyone, for joining tonight's webinar. Without further ado, Austin, do you want to take it away?
I will. Thank you very much, Ariana. Big hand for Ariana, hardest working woman in show business. Thank you very much. Hello, my FLP family. Austin Davis here. And I have got a great topic for you this month. Matter of fact, we could do this every month and it would still serve you well. We're going to talk about de-escalation. And let's think about this for a second. The whole reason you and we become FLP members is to help us not only win the fight with webinars and training, but also the fight after the fight. And you're going to find out, once you understand the basics of de-escalation, it is going to make you see conflict from a 30,000 foot view very differently. There's a very good chance if you can skillfully de-escalate, many situations will never happen. And then heaven help you, if it does happen, it will help us later on the criminal and the civil and the social problems, because we can explain what we did, why we did, how we did, and where the whole situation broke down. And we had to use ordinary or deadly force to solve the problem. Now, de-escalation. A couple things I like to talk to you about de-escalation is it's not what you think it is. This isn't hug a thug, and it's not something magical you can do to somebody. I am a lifelong student of this. Let me tell you a story back when I was 8 years old, when I first kind of figured out what de-escalation was. But currently, to me, de-escalation is one of my true passions. I am a certified instructor for the Force Science Institute's de-escalation program. I'm also I've written a book on de-escalation. I'm a certified crisis intervention counselor with the National Anger Management Association. I'm also PERF, Police Education Research Forum ICAT instructor, which stands for Integrating Communication, Assessment, and Tactics. And it is a turbocharged version of de-escalation for law enforcement officers. And it's the only program that has been studied with metadata to prove that it reduces the consumer injuries, which is the person in crisis, law enforcement, and has a much better chance of motivating the situation to stay left of bang. I've taught this at the academy level, and in my Conceal Coalition University course, we have a de-escalation program. So I think I got quite a good grasp on this. I'm also a law enforcement officer. I'm a training lieutenant for my whole department, and all my officers use this, and we've had really good luck with it. Now, when we talk about de-escalation, first off, understand not all situations can be de-escalated. Remember this. bad guy gets a vote, okay? But there's a lot of things we can do to bring it down. We're never going to trade physical safety, though, for de-escalation. We're always going to understand that basically when we think about de-escalation, it's a way to resolve the situation safer, and we're not going to give up any margin of safety we have to solve that. Now, when it comes to de-escalation, there's actually two different types of de-escalation we're going to talk about tonight. And I want you to really gather this in your head. There's physical de-escalation and there's verbal de-escalation. And I know some of you right now are going, hold on, isn't this the Jedi mind trick like in the first Star Wars? These are not the drones you're looking for, let them pass. Not really. De-escalation physically is a different topic completely than the verbal de-escalation. So let's talk about physical de-escalation first. You're in a public space, or you're in a transitional space, or you're in some situation where somebody's coming at you with a baseball bat and they're trying to turn your head into a canoe. This is really not the time to start showing empathy, to defer and diffuse, to have guided options. Probably not the appropriate point. And at this point, you may want to go ahead and pull the gun, shoot, and stop them. Now, if you did that, if you stopped that person from taking that baseball bat and turning your head into a canoe, you de-escalated it. You de-escalated with gunfire. But you took a situation was here and you brought it down to a manageable situation. Now, hopefully, ideally, that is a very rare thing. And why I want this to be a very rare thing with you, and especially I have to separate my worlds into two worlds. I have sworn and non-sworn, or law enforcement civilians. I personally don't like that because it separates us. So let's just say sworn and not sworn. If you're sworn, you have to stay and solve the situation 99.5% of the time. Whereas if you're a civilian, a lot of times you can just beat feet when you see someone spinning out of control. Do a tactical retreat, a big empathetic, I'm sorry, it's all my fault, let me just get out of here, or just turn, grab your people and go. But when we talk about physical de-escalation, yes, you may have to do it with gunfire. That's a de-escalation. I hate to break it to you, but that is how we do it. Now, that is hopefully a very small amount of what you need to do. If you've ever watched one of my Concealed Coalition University classes on pepper spray, and I think we did a webinar on pepper spray, I have a statement and I use a statistic. It's a made-up statistic, but I think most statistics are made up anyways. But in my opinion, about 85% of the time, your gun is 100% the wrong tool. And this is especially true with de-escalation. That's why I'm a huge fan of having pepper spray. I'm a huge fan of the tactical pen. I'm a huge fan of the leather sap. And if you don't know what a leather sap is, it's an old school police tool that's kind of making resurgence. And make a note, Ariana, we probably ought to do just like a webinar one day on like other than gun tools or guns for non-permissive environments. Problem with sap is some places you live in the United States, they look at this thing worse than a gun, but it has some real applications. It's not an anachronistic weapon by any sense. But in some situations for de-escalation by force, and that's what we're talking about, physical de-escalation, your gun is not going to be the right tool. Not pulling it out and pointing and threatening. You just need something else to stop them. And that's why I really like pepper spray. And if a big blast of pepper spray gets them to reconsider and brings them up from here down to here, or turns their anger inward when they're discussing internally all the poor life choices that led them to a intensely powerful blast of pepper spray, or a sap upside the arm or along the side of the leg to demotivate them and make them rethink some choices they made in life, then that's a de-escalation tool as well. So when you think of physical de-escalation or any de-escalation, it's really going to have three outcomes on this. You want them to stop doing something they want to do. You want them to do something that they don't want to do, or you have to get them to understand the word no. When you think of verbal de-escalation, though, I'm going to teach you a more comprehensive, you think of physical de-escalation. When you think of verbal de-escalation, I'm going to give you a more comprehensive way to approach this. But when it comes to physical de-escalation, you're going to be dealing with one of three things: a good guy, a bad guy, or an unknown guy, or a good person, bad person, or unknown person, if you want to be gender neutral. And in that situation, if you've ever read my book on situational awareness or de-escalation, or if you've seen my Concealed Coalition University classes on this, I really believe one of the things, make a note on this one too, Ariana, we really need to do a class on verbal commands. I know you're going, you can't do a whole class on verbal commands. Yes, I can. And it's important. But you want to use what I used to call, lovingly called the Texas method, but actually it was invented with verbal judo, which is ask, tell, make. So if we have an unknown contact, we don't know what's going on, but they seem to be escalated, and for some reason they haven't, and some sort of irritation going with this. And all anger can basically be basically somebody with an unmet need. And that unmet need could be something simple as abandonment issues, security issues, shame issues, abandonment issues, or seething issues. Seething issues is where, because of a political view or cause, they decide they're going to take out physically with you. And remember, I'm going to probably say this a couple of times tonight. There's only two ways humans communicate: force or reason. And if you can't reason with them, you may have to use force. And that's where the physical and verbal de-escalation kind of meet, because if you find out that they're not reasoning with you and you have to use force, that takes us into another premise. And I want you to think about it in 3 steps: ask, tell, make. One of the questions we had come in already was about, if you meet someone in a parking lot who's approaching you, what do you say to them? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to ask them, hey, I don't know what's going on here. I really can't help you. Will you back up a step? And maybe I can talk to you. That's ask. If you're a normal person, if I came up to you and I needed $1 or a jump on my car, directions, and I came up to you and you went, whoa, sorry, I can't help you, back off. I'm going to go, whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to get in your space. And I'd back up from a distance and go, hey, I just need to know which way to the freeway, or do you have a jump or whatever. But if you say, hey, I can't help you, sorry, I can't help you, back off, and they go, what's your deal? You start coming in closer. That tells you right there. And what I like thinking about the ask part is think of it as sort of a micro compliance check to see if they do check. Now, while you're engaged in this person, you're in a very narrow external quadrant of attention. If you read my situation awareness book, you already know that. If you were on one of my CCUs, you already know that. And if you need a whole seminar or webinar one day on just quadrants of attention, it will change your life when you understand we have 4 of these and how we need to rotate around them every day. So we're either a laser beam, a flashlight, or a sort of disco ball floodlight of attention. But while you're looking at that one person, remember, wolves travel in packs. You may not be aware of the people coming up behind you who are working with the person in front of you. So ask, tell. They keep coming. Hey, I told you, and we need to escalate on up. We might want to do a whole webinar one day on verbal commands. Just trust me. And escalating, and then tell them no, stop, get your hand out. And this does a couple things. One, it lets people in the parking lot or the area know that this is not going on. It's also letting him know visually that you've got something going on with the verbal thing, and allows you to have some sort of reflexive tool so you can get to your pepper spray, your gun, or fist, or leather sap, or whatever else you want to use. And if the asking and the telling doesn't work, you may have to go to making them. Now, there is sort of like the magical question between ask, tell, before make. And that is, if you have a chance, go, is there anything I can say or do to bring the tone of this thing down? Have you walk away, have me walk away, and nobody use any violence. If they screw you and start coming, that's the point you're probably going to have to make them stop. And that's where an intermediate use of force tool comes in real handy. Now, you may be a BJJ expert, you may be a former Golden Gloves boxer, and you may want to go mix it up with people. But the problem is when you go mixing it up, I really don't want to trade pathogens with people over asphalt or concrete. That's really not the best way to use my time. So physical de-escalation, ask, tell, make. You may not get the chance to even verbalize to go through those steps. You may have to go right to some sort of force or intermediate use of force tool. Your verbal commands here need to be loud, clear, and concise. Make sure when you use your verbal commands, you understand what your outcome base is on it, so you don't keep looping and looping. I said drop the weapon. I said drop the weapon. I said drop the weapon. You're trying to do one of 3 things. You use your verbal command. You're trying to freeze them, pin them, or move them. Freeze them. Freeze, don't move. If you reach for something, I'm going to have to do something. That means you don't want to move at all. Pin them means you don't really care if they move around. They just can't get close to your daughter, your son, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, you, whatever. And if you're trying to move them, you need them to go somewhere else. Look, I don't know what you want to do, but get away from me. Everybody's got to be somewhere, but you don't need to be here right now. So when you do your verbal commands, those all tie together with the physical de-escalation. So de-escalation. Sometimes the only way to de-escalate people is to use force, because people only communicate 2 ways: force or reason. And if they're not going to reason with you, unless you can provide and project overwhelming force against them and make them stop, you're not going to be able to de-escalate the situation. And the problem with using force is, if you don't have a tool, it's a fair fight. And if you're in a fair fight in this world, your tactics probably suck. So it has to be within reason and proportionality, but you really want to have some other tool to kind of help you with this situation. So can you de-escalate in a physical sense to bring someone from here and de-escalate them and keep them from doing permanent, temporary, illegal harm against you? Yes, 100%. Okay, got that out the way. Now let's talk about verbal de-escalation. Verbal de-escalation is what most people think of when we think about de-escalation, the Jedi mind trick. These are not the droids you want. Keep going on. The problem with de-escalation is some people seem to think that if you know this, you do this, and you study this, somehow you have magic powers. I know this on patrol. Occasionally I get the call, LT, can you show up on scene and do your magic de-escalation stuff? Like I'm going to show up with some sort of magic trick or whatnot. The problem with de-escalation is not everybody can be de-escalated. Okay, to de-escalate someone, and we're talking about verbal de-escalation here, you have to have three things. They have to have capacity. They have to be thinking clearly enough that they can absorb the message. They have to agree to it. Yeah, what you're saying, I'm down with, and they have to participate to it. So before you can figure out if somebody can be de-escalated, you got to remember they got to have that. And remember also, de-escalation is not something you do to them. It's kind of an alternate thing you're offering them, like, would you like a plate of cookies? How about a fresh baked pie? Pizza? And if they say no, hey, it's just not happening. So when it comes to verbal de-escalation, there's a couple of systems we can use that will make things easier, that will give you a backup tool. And if you just remember them in a time of crisis, you'll always have something to fall back on, and you have to think of new and novel thoughts. Remember, though, when you are involved in de-escalation, your attention, your quadrants of attention are going to be external and narrow. So if you're with your significant other or whatnot, if you're in a contact situation, someone needs to be in a cover. So they're looking at the 270 degrees that you cannot focus on because you're worried about this one thread here, and you're having to communicate and think, and it's taking a lot of bandwidth. If you are by yourself in a de-escalation situation, make sure that you create enough standoff distance, you have enough reactionary gap that you can afford the time to look on around, or you need to get that in your favor before you start trying to de-escalate somebody. When it comes to de-escalation verbally, or actually physically, break it down into two categories. And again, sworn and not sworn, police, civilians if you want, but I really like sworn, not sworn. If I'm either on duty or off duty, I have a certain responsibility to get involved in this and try to affect some sort of positive outcome against some sort of illegal or aggressive act. You as a non-sworn person don't have to do this. And if you don't have to get mixed up in it, my advice is to back off. The great part about this is in a lot of situations you can. The bad part is in a lot of de-escalation situations, you cannot back off. Maybe your exit is blocked between you and the person who is spinning out of control. Maybe you're in a situation where you're at work. Maybe you have a neighbor. Maybe this person you're trying to de-escalate is known to you. It's a son, daughter, cousin, brother, sister, close friend who's in your space, and you have to bring them down to prevent them from harming you or someone, a third party around them. So if you are in this situation, understand this is, they say the most dangerous call in law enforcement is a domestic dispute. I would argue that I would say equally as dangerous as someone who is in a high state. See, the problem is whenever we have to de-escalate somebody, before we even de-escalate them, you need to know what you're working with. We use something called the TEB profile, T-E-B. What are their thoughts? Is it clear or contaminated? Do they have the capability to even understand what you're saying? Now, this could be dementia, drugs, alcohol, a lot of different reasons, just such blind rage that they have gone into amygdala hijack. Now, if you don't know what amygdala hijack is, you ever had a problem with someone you have close relationships with, and you two start, and this thing builds up so much that days later, when you think back to what you said or what you did, you were really shocked. You're like, my gosh, I can't believe I said that. I was just so mad. That's when you lose all of your executive function, the human part of your brain. You go past your mammalian brain and you really go into actual lizard brain, the little tiny little walnut-sized part of your brain that acts as sort of your body's alarm system. Your limbic system gets in hijack, and you just go into a situation where you react, not respond. So before we talk about the specifics of verbal de-escalation, a couple of things here. Number one, what's the number one rule of de-escalation? Do not escalate. The problem is when you start trying to de-escalate somebody, we're not really sure what their hooks and their triggers are. A trigger is something that will set them off, some sort of unmet need that you poked that somehow was seething, abandonment, security, lack of autonomy, disrespect, whatever it is, sets them off. And you don't know what you're saying and how they frame it, because so little of what we say, especially as someone who's in crisis, who's way up here, is the words we're using. They're looking at your body language, your tone of voice, and they're also listening for cues for your active listening. And when you're in that situation, you need to really monitor your own arousal. And if you don't believe me and you want some homework, go on YouTube and look at some body cameras of some officers. And you can tell they come on, they're very professional. This person's jacked up, and then maybe they fight him into handcuffs. Maybe they do whatever. Maybe they spit on him. And all of a sudden you see this officer who should be down here, and this person should be feeding off their biology and their sense of calm. And it just spins them right up. And you can see this. And as they go up, you can watch their ability to logic way through this is kind of tough. One of the other ways to self-regulate is to make sure in a situation you do not confuse the facts for your story. You do not confuse your facts for your story. Let me explain what I mean. One of my favorite officers is my sergeant, and she was arresting somebody last week. After she got him in handcuffs to get him in the car, he decides to run and spit on her. Now, I don't mean one of these little accidental piece of spittle flies out while he's using profanity or screaming out how unfair this all is. I mean a right on her. She pushes him in the patrol car, shuts it in, starts heading off down to jail. And the whole back, he's just mouthing off, trying to push her buttons. And I was really impressed. And I'm like going, how did you not, lose your cool here? Because you have to understand, talk about an unmet need that causes anger, being respected, and someone spitting on you, especially spitting in your face. This is something that could really set you off. And while she may not have understood the difference between facts and her story, the way she related to me, I thought was a perfect illustration of this, because she said, look, I had him in the back of the car. We've got the plexiglass divider between the back of the car. He wasn't going to spit on me again. There was no need to spin this up, because it wasn't about stopping him from spitting again. It's about getting him to jail. On the way over there, she thought about this and said, hey, have a spit mask ready for him. He's already spit on me. And so she didn't mix the facts from the story in this thing. So make sure you read it for what it is, see what's threatening and what's a threat, and then focus on the what's now problem. So you come into a situation, the first thing you ask yourself is, before you do any one of these methods I'm getting ready to teach you, is the contact. You want to ask yourself, do I need to get involved with this or not? If you can leave it, great. And you don't have to just leave and not do anything. If you see someone spinning out of control in a public place or a family member, you can go to a place of safety, get on the cell phone, call into the PD, talk to dispatch. They're in almost every region, they're trained to ask you the right questions, get the right information to make the responding officer as effective as possible, and try to keep everything to the left of bang. Another note, Ariana, we really ought to do a whole webinar on how to be a good witness. I know a lot of you are thinking, oh my gosh, we don't need training how to be a witness. Trust me, we need training how to be a witness. It will help you catch more bad guys with the police. It will help you not put yourself in a place to where you say something that is inaccurate, whether you're aware of that or not. And it will also teach you the fine line of how to make a statement as a witness when you are part of the suspect pool on this thing. Because remember, there's always four kinds of people we deal with as police officers. There's the suspect, there's the victim, there's the witness, and there's the bystanders. And each one of those categories of suspect, witness, victim, and bystander needs to have different training on how to actually be a witness. And one of those, you might not even want to be a witness when the responding officer shows up. So anyways, so first decide if you're going to make contact with them. The next thing you want to decide before you make contact with them and use what I'm about to teach you in this form is you want to ask yourself, what are my tactics going to be like? Now, tactics is not growing a beard, getting a bunch of tattoos, and telling me how you killed more enemy combatants and unfiltered cigarettes. It is about controlling the three variables we have in any crisis: time, distance, and safer angles. Time, do you want to act now or do you want to wait? As a police officer, you think, well, I've got to go on in. No, I don't. I may need to wait up and hold up here just to make sure, look, if that person who's spinning up our consumer is in a dangerous situation, but they're by themselves and they're contained, I may want to wait for other officers. I may have other officers with me, but I may go, you know what? This situation is really beyond my ability to deal with it. I really need to get on the radio and call dispatch and see if we have the specialized crisis intervention team that can roll out and deal with this. I may want to go ahead and get back with dispatch and say, you know what? I don't want to get close to them. Do you have this the person who's the reporting party, do they have this person's cell phone number? Because then I can call them from a distance. Maybe I can start my working with them to bring them down, my little process here, from a distance. So time, do you have to act now or do you have to wait? Is time your friend or not your friend? Distance, do you want to get closer or farther away? If you think that this is threatening and a threat and it could turn into threatening or there's too much risk, of course, do not get too close. Or even if you can't expand that distance, maybe you can move yourself behind a parked car, maybe move yourself behind a picnic bench, maybe move yourself behind some sort of big object that gives you more reactionary gap. More distance means more time means more options, and allows you a better chance using executive function to solve your problem than kicking off with just whatever comes out as sort of a primitive response. And then finally, so distance, and then can I get a safer angle? Now, once you decide, okay, I need to use verbal de-escalation tools, there's several of them. As an ICAT, integrating communication assessment and tactics instructor, there's a certain wheel, like an OODA loop, that I would use in law enforcement. I'm not so sure that that wheel really relates to civilians. If you've read my book on de-escalation, or if you've seen my Concealed Collision University episode on de-escalation, you're probably raising your hand right now in the back row. It's the 5 steps to de-escalation. That's the 5 steps to de-escalation. Let's go over the 5 steps and talk about them. And then I'm going to give you another option, which I recently came into that I've used, and I think it might work better, and it might be easier for you to pick up quicker and remember under stress. Now, if you've seen my book, you've read my book, and if you've been to the de-escalation Concealed Collision University episode, I do a 5-step. First off is contact. Am I in a situation? Can I control my emotions? Do I need to be involved in this or not? Is time my friend? Do I got time, distance, and safer angles on my ability scale on my side or not? Then we're going to go through 5 steps. And I think of these as 5 steps because if you get from here to here to here and it blows up, just go back to the first step. If it gets to here to here to here and it blows up, go back to the second step, or wherever you think you can get them back. So the first step is contact, whether or not you want to make contact with them, how you want to frame it. I show up, hi, I'm Lieutenant Davis with Blank Police Department. I'm here to help you. I got called out. Or I call up and I go, hey, I'm Lieutenant Davis. My friends call me Austin. What do your friends call you? What would you like to be called today? So I may want to frame that in, or, hey, I know you're a dad. I see you're upset. I'm a dad too. My son's name's Justin. What's your son's name? And you may want to come in and frame this as sort of more of a co-equal partner than, hi, I'm Teacher Jones, or hi, I'm the manager of this place. That may help you in some situations with the authority that you inherently have in the situation, but it may create too big a barrier between you and the person who's in crisis to communicate. After you do that, first thing you want to do is you want to make rapport. You want to do empathy with them. Now, empathy is kind of tough sometimes because in law enforcement, I may get called out to someone who's out of control, and they've injured the family dog, they've injured another family member, and in my mind, I've got 2 parts here. One of them is this is domestic violence, this is family violence in my state. They're going to jail. But I need to bring them down. I need to be able to talk them into handcuffs. I need them to be compliant in getting there. Yes, you can force them in that, but that risks me, that risks the other officers, that risks the person who's in crisis. So we want to use empathy. Now, empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is trying to see their situation from their eyes. So when you're listening to them, listen to them and through them. Find out what unmet need they have. Is someone disrespecting them? Is it an autonomy issue? Are they lonely? Are they tired? Are they hungry? Is this one of the sad hats? Are they sick on alcohol? Are they on drugs? Are they hungry? Are they anxious? Are they tired? Are they sleepy? Listen to these things. And after you get the empathy from that down there, then you need to build rapport. And you can do rapport in a number of different ways. One way is just universal acceptance of what they just said. Hey, I hear what you're saying. You're homeless and you're in this McDonald's and you're screaming. And I understand. Hey, look, everyone's got a right to have their opinions heard, and everyone's got to be somewhere. Then I throw in the magical but. But the law is if the manager says leave, we have to leave. So you try to build some empathy in them. And the next thing you want to do is you want to build rapport. I had a situation to where I had a 19-year-old individual one day when I was on patrol who wanted to have suicide by cop. He decided that I needed to end his life. He did not want to do it, and he wanted me. Fortunately, I had the patrol car between me and him, and I had some distance. First thing that came up is, hey, man, I know what's going on right here. Your mom told me you got something's going on. All family problems are difficult, and all family problems are complex. I haven't heard your side yet. I'd like to hear your side. And so we had to go through several of these things where I sort of got it. And then I had to get to a place where I could get some sort of rapport with him after I had the empathy. And the way I built the rapport was he was wearing a Dallas Cowboys hat. And I went, hey, we do have a problem here. We need to assess really quickly. And that is, you have a Dallas Cowboy hat on. I'm a Texans fan. Can we still be friends? And he kind of looked at me weird and he started laughing. And I said, you know, that one star on the side of their helmet, that's not a logo. That's a Yelp rating. And so I got him to laugh a little bit, and that broke, and that got us a little bit of rapport built up. Then after that, you want to try to see if you can build some influence. So if you want to build influence, it could be like, you know, hey, blank, I knew what his name was. I said, here's the deal. You're talking real fast, and I'm old, and I've been around guns as a firearms instructor for like 32 years. Could you just go a little slower and a little softer? Because I really need to hear what you're saying, because you're the only one who can tell me what's going on. And that got him to have some empathy with me, and it got him to have some influence. And then once we get to influence, we have behavior change. So the steps are: contact, decide before you go if you need to go, and make sure you're prepared. Make sure you keep yourself in check, because the first rule of de-escalation is do not escalate. And if you're in an excited state, you can't bring somebody down. They won't match your biology. Next thing you want to do is express empathy by listening to them and through them, and repeat back what they're missing on this thing is, yes, I know you say you have no friends, and everyone deserves a friend. Can I be your friend today? I don't want you as my friend. It's like, yeah, I want Billy and Sammy, and they're gone, and whatever. And go, I know Billy and Sammy are gone today, but I can be a pretty good friend. And, you know, one thing you mentioned was you're really hungry and you're really tired. Tell you what, I got a sandwich in my patrol car, and I've got a cooler full of Diet Coke. Would you like something to drink and something to eat? Try to build this rapport with them. Try to find something. And you may have to use some tactical empathy here, but be very careful when you're building rapport. You can't lie to them. So if you're building rapport with someone who's hearing voices, and sometimes these voices you're dealing with are so loud that the person in crisis, your consumer, can't even hear you. So if they ask you, man, these voices, can't you hear them? It'd be easier for you to lie and go, yes, I can hear them. If you ever lie to these people, you're done for. You might as well get another officer, in your case, another non-sworn person to come over and take over, because they're not going to trust you anymore. Now, the right response is, no, Sparky, I can't hear those voices, but I believe you do. And it would be very helpful if we knew what those voices were telling you. Are they telling you to hurt yourself? Are they telling you to hurt me? Are they telling you to hurt someone else? So you want to use this thing in a way that elicits real rapport and bonding in this thing. And then once you get to that point, then you can start going for behavior change. Remember, the behavior change you're looking for is get them to stop what they want to do, get them to do something they don't want to do, or the absolute no. And you can work through these things, and anywhere it blows up, just roll back into a step. Now, this works really well, and I've used it in many, many real-world situations, and it saved my bacon, and it's my go-to. I've recently come up with another one that I learned from the National Anger Management Institute. I'm a certified crisis intervention specialist, level 2. And in the National Anger Management Association methodology, they use something called EDGE. I really think for most non-sworn people, this EDGE technique of de-escalation works better. First off, I think it's an easier mnemonic to come up with when you're trying to figure out what you need to say next in the formula, while you're actively listening, making sure that you are responding, not reacting to what this person's saying. And so the only thing EDGE leaves out is the contact part. So before you start, figure out, do I need to be involved in this or not? Do I need to back off and call 911 and get more people here? Do I need more people even though I called 911 to solve this problem? Is this person a threat or threatening? Do I need to be closer, farther, safer angle? So once you get that all worked out, the first thing is empathy. Active listening. Listen to them and through them. Listen to what they're saying. They're telling you, it's like playing cards with someone with a marked deck. They're telling you what they need. What is their unmet need going on? Are they tired? They're hungry. They've been disrespected. Are they lonely? Are they alienated? Do they feel shame? Whatever this is, listen to it. And then after that, you need to defer and diffuse with what they just told you. That's ED. And defer and diffuse is, I hear what you're saying. Everyone has a right to be somewhere. Even though you are someone without a home right now, you still need to be somewhere. I hear what you're saying. The G is guided options. And at that point in time, you give them guided options. And you want to put these guided options in positive tones. You know, do you want cake or ice cream? It's not, do you want to go to jail? Do you want to get tased? You know, it's you really want to try to put it in a positive way. So if you show up and you do the E part, you're doing the empathy part, you hear this and you try to feed it back to them, and they keep blowing up, just keep listening to what they're saying until you start to bring them down. bring them down. Now, you don't want to ask a bunch of questions when they're up in there, but you may have to question them to see what's going on. For example, they're swinging a pole or they have a knife. It's like, hey, dude, what caused you to pick up the pole or the knife today? And if they say it's to hurt the first police officer that shows up, I guarantee you I need to be on vacation that day, or I need to get some distance on away. If they say it's to hurt myself, that's still a threat, but it may not be threatening. And that's a big difference in how we're going to deal with this thing going forward. Once you find some responses you can give to them, you want to diffuse and defer this. Now, there's a number of ways you can do this. That's the D and the edge. You can say, it's the law. You have to leave the McDonald's. You can't stay here and scream. The manager, when he says you have to go. So you turn it into the manager between us. The problem with that is now he's going to direct his anger towards that person manager that he sees and knows, where you might want to go, in every McDonald's in America, everyone's got to go. You can say policy, rules, procedures, or you can do the universal thing. I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. Everyone's got a right to be somewhere. Everyone's got a right to be heard. Everyone's got a right to have friends. Everyone's got a right to, and you give a universal thing. And hopefully that helps start the connection to build you a way to connect that empathy, to get them to feel like, hey, someone heard me. Someone's listening to me. And then you want to give them the guided options. So if you say, hey, look, let's say you're in a situation to where you're in a McDonald's and this person's screaming and you think this could turn into a threat, and you decide you want to get mixed up in this, come on in and go, hey, I hear what you're saying. Everyone's got a right to be heard, and everyone's got a right to be somewhere, but you can't do this in a McDonald's. Every McDonald's in America says if the manager says you got to go, you got to go. So here's the deal. Can we walk outside and take 2 steps off the property? I'll take as long as it wants to hear what you've got and see if we're going to screw you. I don't want this. You don't understand. The VA has poisoned me with these drugs and I'm in a bad way. And then you go, okay, what I just heard. Hey, everyone's got a right to be respected, but especially a veteran. And if the VA is not treating you right, you probably have a right to feel that way. Hey, let me tell you what, can we go out here? Let me Google on this machine I got in my pocket, and let's see if we can find a VA program that'll work for you. Let me see if I can get somebody on the phone right now that we can put a name to get you fixed. See what we're doing? We're getting the guided options. They need to be positive. Now, if you're going through the cycle 3, 4, 5 times and you're still not getting this acceptance, because remember, they got to have capacity, the ability to see what's going on, the TEB profile, thoughts, emotions, behavior. Thoughts, are they clear, contaminated? Emotions, are they high or low? And is your behavior compliant or non-compliant? I forgot to do all the earlier TED things. I'm sorry about that. If you realize you don't have the capacity for this, you may have to keep going back and back and back. And at some point, though, you may say, you know what, we need to put a negative connotation. If you're going to say a negative guided option, you want to put it between a positive and a positive. So, hey, look, if you just step out the restaurant, we won't have to call the police. You won't have to go to jail. And I can get on the phone, or I'll get you a drink out there and we can go sit underneath the tree and talk about this. And if you do get them to accept one of those guided options, here comes the E, encourage in positive tones. Hey, I know it's a big step. I know it's difficult. Thanks for trusting in me. You're doing fine. I know you had a tough day, but you've already done so much better at calming yourself down. I really appreciate what you're doing. You didn't strike me as the kind of guy who'd want to scare children. And look what you've done. You just calming down. You've calmed down the whole situation. Thank you very much. We all appreciate it. And if they do blow up, you may have to go back up to guided options. You may have to go up to diffuse and defer and diffuse, or you may have to go all the way back up and start this. I don't know how long your de-escalation is going to take. It's going to take as long as it is to get the person from here to where they can come down low enough to understand, to have the capacity, the agreement, and the participation to bring you out of this. Now, the cool thing about de-escalation is when I talk about de-escalation in a firearms legal protection webinar or a concealed coalition webinar, we always think about this in a criminal setting. And I do think it has a lot of value in a criminal setting. But the cool thing is if you're married, you're dating, you have a significant other, you have children, you have cousins, you have friends, you'll find ways to use this thing in all sorts of situations. So if you're just traveling with a buddy and the traffic's all spun up and they get a phone call that spins them up, you can practice these same techniques of empathy, of rapport building, of influence and decision making, or you can do empathy, you can diffuse and defer, then you can use guided options, and then you can encourage the positive reinforcement, and you can work through this. And if you get this down in your head and you practice a time or two, and the first time you do it and you bring them down, I'm telling you, it's like a superpower. And you'll start finding yourself making very casual connections. Somebody's having a frustrating day and just practicing with it and bringing it on down. And when you do this the first couple of times, there's a real personal return on this thing, because if you are doing this and monitoring this person out of control and really monitoring your emotions, it teaches you how not to be one of these Karens or Darrens. No offense to anybody's named Karen and Darren in the audience, but when you watch these YouTubes and you watch these people freaking out, and I need to see the manager, what is going on here? They're in crisis. They've lost executive function in their brain. They've gone past the human part of the brain. They've gone past the mammalian part of the brain. They're in lizard brain. And we need some way to pattern interrupt them to get them out of that, whether that is humor, whether that's empathy, whether that's just active listening, or whether it's just giving them time and space in a situation where you have sectioned them off to where they're not going to harm themselves or other people, and you can just kind of let them vent on down. Probably 40-50% of these cases, if you just get them in a safe spot where they can't hurt anybody or anything and just let them vent, the adrenaline runs down. After a while, they just start wearing down. And if you start seeing them physically wearing down, that's the time to slide on in. Also, my experience is sometimes you'll see people that are doing this kind of pattern through this. You'll see them escalate, then they'll drop down, escalate and drop down. And you may want to time this after they get up and they huff and puff and they're screaming and they're kind of catching their breath. You may want to try to make your empathetic appeal at that point in time at the bottom section and work it on out. But remember, while this is all going on, it takes a lot of focus, and you are externally narrow focused, which means you really don't know if a car is going to drive down the road and hit you, if someone else is going to show up, or you might have this whole thing on and all of a sudden a family member shows up and you've got this thing 99% of the thing locked up. They're going to agree to go in handcuffs. They're going to agree to get in the back of the car, and then some family member shows up and kaboom, rockets off. We're back into the whole situation, in which case you have to take a deep breath, understand this is going to take as much time as it's going to take, and you have to decide at some point, though, logic, force or reason. And if they're not going to reason, you may have to call a next level of care or a higher level of law enforcement to come in to help you affect what it's going to take to restrain these people and go get them, hopefully, ideally, to treatment. So there's a whole lot to unwrap. Basically, de-escalation is not just about not having to use force, but if it is talked about in using force, it can help us keep from having to use force. It can keep us in high executive function, keep us in our human brain as long as possible, so we make decisions that are based on response to, not reaction to events, and you can stay in executive function. If you do have to use force, it can help you in the criminal, civil case, and the social pariah issues that could come out of using force in any situation. If you have to use force to de-escalate and you only carry a gun, I hate to say this because it's so trite, but it's like the old saying, if all you have is a hammer, all your problems look like a nail. And pulling a gun gun's a very useful tool for a very narrow set of circumstances to save human life, not harm innocent life, and the tool of last resort. And I really like you having intermediate use of force of weapons if you're going to have to de-escalate physically. If you see me on patrol, if you ever see pictures of me, I wear an external vest, and I've got a taser, I've got an ASP baton, I've got a pepper spray, I've got options that allow me to do something other than go hands-on or gun, because there probably needs to be something between a pistol and profanity, and I really just believe a pepper spray is in good use for that. And if you're trying to de-escalate physically, you may want to go ahead through the process of ask, tell, make, so that you have sort of a logical progression to work through that. If you have to verbally de-escalate, remember, they got to have capacity, they got to have agreement, and they got to have participation in this thing. Use a TEB profile to see what you're working with to kind of figure this out. TEB thoughts, are they clear, contaminated thoughts? Are they high or low emotion? Are they compliant or non-compliant? That TEB profile is the same thing we were taught in the force science de-escalation thing. And once you understand that, even when you're watching YouTube videos of people in crisis, try to figure out what you got going on here. Because if you have a clear thinking person of low emotion who's non-compliant, that's the most dangerous thing you've got. You've got a contaminated thinking, you have low emotion, and you have high compliance. You might have somebody who's left the home from Alzheimer's who's just confused. And if you work this, you can find a peaceful resolution to it. When it comes time to figure out what you want, you can use the 5 stair steps, or you can use the edge profile. As long as you're using something that gives you a framework to work on that limits the amount of mental bandwidth you have to burn off to resolve this thing, to bring it to close, go with that. Practice it in non-life-threatening, non-critical situations. But remember, we never trade safety for de-escalation. Remember, time, distance, safer angles, work all that together. Hope you got something out of this. It's really something I would like to think that we would hopefully come back every 3 months and do a class on de-escalation, because I have a theory. I think the world's just, pardon me for saying this, but I think the world's kind of just really jacked up and pissed off right now at each other. I think this side and this side have othered each other so bad, and everything's become so politicized that literally you can't talk about sports, you can't talk about current events without people getting spun up. And the thing is, for me, training has to be 3 things. It has to be recent, realistic, and relevant. And I really think that this is one of those skill sets that's more important than a sub-second draw from concealment. I think this is more important than shooting a B8 at 25 yards. I really do think this is a skill set, but it's one that has to be learned, has to be practiced, has to be mastered. And it'd be kind of fun if we had people who we could pop in the screen and I could be the actor of someone out of control and let them work through the edge thing. That's how we train the certified crisis intervention specialist in the National Anger Institute. And it might be fun for you all to kind of pop on in and pop on out and work this on out. So something to talk to the lovely and gracious Ariana about making happen, because webinar here, she can make this happen. These are the toys.
Oh yeah. That's actually a fabulous idea. Usually we do stuff like that in like actual in-person seminars, but doing it over a webinar, we can bring in like John Brand, for example, or even Jody. We can bring him on here. So that
you're not going to de-escalate Jody if he's in character. Trust me. This is like industrial. This is like if you pass the first 2, you pass Austin, you pass John, we put Jody up. Let's see how they do.
Oh yeah. We actually had Jody and John, I think, on in January of this year. And that they're great guys, but they have a lot of knowledge, just like you. But having Jody on here would be fabulous.
Love to have him. I think of him as my brother from another mother. So I told him when I met him, I said, I just want to be just one of the third PQ brother at Thanksgiving. He's like, I think we worked that out. So definitely.
It's so sweet.
So we had some questions.
Yes, yeah. But thank you for joining us, Austin, and sharing all your knowledge to us and this topic to our viewers and me, because I'm also a viewer. I'm in the back end snacking a little bit, but I'm learning a lot as you're presenting all of this information. But you gave us a lot of valuable tools to take away from here and strategies that we can use if we ever are in a situation where we have to unfortunately de-escalate anything. But thank you for also sharing your real life scenario that you went through, because that was pretty amazing that you were able to bring in your skills at being very personal and helping people laugh too, with bringing just like little like key words and jokes, the Dallas Star, the Cowboys and all that. That was really amazing to bring his emotions down from that unfortunate situation. But I just want to say thank you again before we get into the questions. All right, so we have a couple pre-submitted questions and then some comments. If any of you guys have any questions, make sure to submit them in the comments. We have a couple questions here, and the first one is, what should you say initially to possible attacker?
The first thing is, I think we kind of covered it a little bit in here, is you want to stick your hand out. And this is, to me, is really important because it does a couple things. If you do have to use force later on and somebody's witnessing this or filming this, it shows from a distance that, hey, I don't want this interaction. Next thing is this, ideally, if I use my support hand, my pepper spray or my gun is going to be in a protected position. I can use this to fend off an attack. I can use it to protect my head. And at that point in time, I need them to just stop what they're doing. And I really like the phrase, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And if you do want to help and say, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right there. Can you back up, please, and give me some more room? And that's sort of a micro compliance check to see what's going on. I was reading the comments. I didn't click on those while I was talking, but also one of the things that can really de-escalate a situation I forgot to mention is a tactical, my bad. I'm so sorry. I don't care if they're calling you a really ugly name or talking crap about your heritage or your mama or whatever. Just throw your hands up in the universal surrender position. This is also a fencing position, so you can protect yourself. You can throw your hands out and pull one back. And so it's not only a hey, I surrender position, it's also the first best way to protect your head, your neck, your vital areas, and have them above your belt line to respond back. And again, if it's being filmed or whatnot. So first you want to have that. If they don't back off, you need to back off. And if they start coming forward, then it goes to the ask, tell, make part. And so the thing about the make, someone asked want to know more about the make, please. At some point, if they're, remember, humans only communicate two ways, force or reason. If they're not going to reason with you, you're going to use a level of force. Now, what is that force? Stomp your foot, hold your breath? No, you're going to have to project some sort of punitive measure that causes them more discomfort or the threat of more discomfort than they're willing to put on. And the way I like to think about this is even if you're bluffing with the pepper spray or you're bluffing with your asp or whatnot, do it with 100% commitment that you're going to follow through. Because if they do come through, you need to be preloaded that, hey, if they do this, I'm going to, because a lot of times it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening to me. They're really coming at me. So when you tell them no, that make part is for you internally. That, yeah. And if you wanted to ask the universal question beforehand, which is, is there anything I can say or do to just get you, leave me alone, back off, put the bat down, go away? If they say, no, I'm coming at you, well, then you already know we're coming to the make part and your decision is preloaded. And we've saved yourself a whole lot of, is this legal? Can I, should I, must I? All those things we have to work on through. So work it on out. So hopefully that would be what I would say. And remember, when you see somebody showing up, you're trying to immediately define, are they a good person, a bad person, unknown person? And the fast way to do that is say, hey, stop what you're doing. I can't help you. Please back up a few steps if you want to talk to me. And if you get that, yeah, it's good. But remember, you've got this very external, narrow focus. So wolves travel in packs. Be very careful for their buddies coming up behind you.
Yeah, definitely. Great point.
Great question.
Yeah. How to deal with threatening persons whose facility with English is poor and or whose culture is not American, like an illegal migrant, or probably if they're on the border of Texas, I'm assuming is a possibility.
This is a really great question. I'm going to have a mildly sarcastic answer, but even though it's a great question, that is, I just use my Google Translator for criminals.
Yeah.
It's a really good pepper spray. The thing is, this handout, it's an immediate defensive action. I can face plan them. I can do all sorts of things out here. I can deflect something coming at me. So, and this is universal, whether you say pare, alto, whatever, but make sure you got it backed up with something that can go ahead and actually shut them down. Because if words don't work, we have to go, remember, force or reason. So I would start with a hand out there. I would give a firm command. I'd look them right in the eye with that look that, hey, this is not the fish you want to eat. Go find a weaker fish.
Yeah. All right. Next question. If I witness some guys trying to steal my catalytic converter off my car, and that's an issue in a lot of places, can I use my gun to stop them? And are there consequences of discharging my gun or hurting or killing the robber?
No and yes. Remember, a gun is a tool for a very limited purpose. Okay, it's a wonderful tool, a very effective tool with a narrow band of use. What are those three things? I mentioned it earlier tonight. It's to save human life, not harm innocent life, and the tool of last resort. So let me get this straight. You're going to risk your freedom, your financial ability, your family's financial security, possibly getting a gunfight over a catalytic converter. This is insane. Now, flip the lights on outside, call the police, make sure you have a Ring doorbell camera. These are all great. But remember, we don't want to risk we can't afford to lose. And you're going, well, I can't afford to lose my catalytic converter. You can't afford to lose your life. And if you do a quick Google search, you'll find more than one person who was shot and killed. We have a deputy constable here recently who was shot and killed and this is someone who's in a clearly marked police external vest with a firearm under color of law coming to stop this. And he got killed by the person stealing the catalytic converter. So no. Now, a better option on this would be they make the catalytic converter cages. You can paint them bright colors. You can go ahead and etch your VIN number into it. Those are some other options. But using a gun to save life, no. Remember, if it's not saving human life, not harming innocent life, and tool of last resort. And when I say not harming innocent life is, if you get in a gunfight, remember, there are no misses in a gunfight. What do you mean? It's going to hit somewhere, and every one of those hits is your responsibility. So these people learn to shoot fast and accurate. That's great, but make sure you're not shooting faster than you can process, because every round needs to be accounted for. And you're going to have a hard time explaining to a rational jury why you terminated somebody's life over a catalytic converter. So. I hate to give you that news, but I really hate not to give you that news. And decide what you will and will not fight for. I wear a very fancy watch. I've had it since I was 18 years of age. It's getting my family. I really like this watch. The problem is if you come stick a gun in my face, you're getting the watch. It's not worth me getting a gunfight over. Now, if they don't stick a gun in my face, they just walk up to me and say, "I want your watch." We might have a fist fight. We might have a pepper spray war, but we're not having a gunfight over this. So something to think about. Now, if you think it's going to turn into something more than that, or they say, "Come with me, I'm taking your watch and taking you from the primary secondary crime scene," these are all factors. So you can go down a big rabbit hole, but no, you cannot use a firearm in good faith no.
No. We actually had someone comment on YouTube saying can versus should, and that's also a very good point.
It's three things. It's three things there. It's can I, should I, must I. The can part's very interesting. Is y'all are pretty aware, if you ever see me speak, I own a virtual tactical academy. I travel the United States for the last 12 years with a Pelican case with a very, very expensive virtual reality simulator. I've seen tens of thousands of civilian gunfights in a simulated environment. 1 out of 5 of my students cannot shoot the actor on the screen. 1 out of 5 of them can't shoot the actor on the screen. So something to think about. Also, invariably, right when the time's to shoot, they'll turn to me and go, "Can I shoot him?" And I always say the same thing. "I don't know. Can you?" What they're asking is, can I legally shoot him? Can I physically shoot him? Can I emotionally shoot him? And these are things you need to decide beforehand and make sure when the physical part, if you take the worst day at the range and then knock 50% off that's about what you're going to shoot at under stress. Think of police officers. We only hit like 18, 20% of what we shoot at under stress. And, we have to qualify every year in a certain thing. And I'm not so sure that police officers as a whole are better shooters than my firearms legal protection, my FLP family. Y'all probably be better than my average officer. But yeah, think about these things really hard.
Yeah. All right, we have one more question left in the pre-submitted questions. If any of you guys watching have any more questions, make sure to submit them before we close out tonight's webinar. All right, last question. What to do if you surprise an intruder in your house, and what to do if you wake up at night and hear someone breaking in?
Well, you came to my Laughing at Danger, which is my favorite piece of work. As y'all may or may not be aware, I'm a former professional stand-up comedian. I had a home invasion 32 years ago, and I'm the guy who invented comedy defensive driving. So I spent a year becoming a more informed in the crime thing. And so I developed this stand-up routine that teaches personal safety. And I really think when it comes to home safety, it's not about shotgun versus pistol, baseball bat versus, hockey stick. It really is about a layer of defense. Make sure psychologically there's nothing that attracts the bad guys to your home. The second thing is good physical security. There's good door or window locks. Make sure you use those locks. And the third thing is actual protection if they come on in. If you do have someone come in your house at night, one of the things you can do is a couple of things. First off, you should decide where those places of no pass are. I lived in a 3-story house for a long time. My family was up on the 3rd floor. If they came in on the 1st or 2nd floor, hey, keep taking what you want to take. You come up to the 3rd floor, family's there. I'm back in a corner. Their head's coming up. They're in a bad fatal funnel. I'm going to yell down, state your name, state your name, state your name. Who are you? It's your cousin Billy. I'm stealing your TV. Well, I may not shoot cousin Billy. Okay. But if it is somebody who's got a reason to be there, something to think about. Next thing is, do you have a powerful defensive flashlight in the home? I'm not talking about the cell phone light. I mean something that's got just crazy, stupid candela that punches out so you can see what's going on. You can blind them, use the control and identification of the device. And this is not the light built into the end of your gun, because I don't want you pointing a gun at your teenage son or daughter to try to figure this out. This is not good. We don't point guns things you're not supposed to. Have a powerful light. But decide beforehand what you will and will not fight for. And if you can escape and you can get out of there, great. If you've got some sort of hardened fortification where you've got your cell phone, you can call for the police. Remember, when seconds count, we're only minutes away. And then, of course, they always complain when I show up, it took you forever. I could have called for pizza and got here quicker. And I go, yeah, but you tipped the pizza guy. So, if you tip your police officer, you're going a little quicker. So these are real deals, but you shouldn't have a situation they come in, get a dog, get an alarm system, get serious locks, make sure if they're coming in, they're breaking a glass, splintering a lot of wood, setting off the alarm, dog starting to bark, give yourself some time and some warning. So that comes into preparation. We hope we do the pre-done stuff so we don't end up with this thing as a crisis communication.
Yeah. And so I think in June is whenever we had our webinar topic over home defense. So you went over a lot of information regarding that specific topic too. So that'd be a great one to go back on our YouTube channel. We have it all there, so you can watch it whenever you have time. But I think that's the last comment. No more came through. Before I wrap it up, do you have any last remarks or anything you want to make for our viewers?
Really, we're in a weird situation right now to where it just seems like everybody is so spun up. The only thing we can do to correct this is be the change in the world we want to be and we want to see. So start being very careful where your arousal levels are. Work real hard on your othering of people. I was recently at a very close friend of mine's house, and he espoused a political view, and I kind of felt myself have a little bit of one of these. I don't know if y'all can relate to that, and I just wanted to kind of go, well, the facts are really this, this, and this. But I realized that's from my framework, and that's not from his framework, and it's not important. What I really need to do at that point in time is just check my behavior, keep my arousal rate, keep an executive function, and just keep on having a lovely chat with a person I hadn't seen in a while. And being very aware of our arousal rates are. If you watch two people going at road rage, those are just two extreme lizard brains fighting each other when somebody needs to be down here in executive function and thinking about it. And never be afraid to throw your hands up and say, hey, my bad, I'm sorry, and try to find a very thank you, hasty, tactical retreat out of the situation. And if all else fails, remember what I always tell you. Be a guardian always, and a warrior when needed.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Austin, for joining us. And if any of you guys do have any additional questions or would like to join some of the Austin or Conceal Coalition courses, please email marketing@firearmslegal.com. I'll get you all the information you need and help answer any questions that you have, or find someone that can answer any of the questions that you have that I can't respond with. But thank you all again for joining this month's webinar. And remember to click the links in the caption below if you want to get protected at a discounted rate. If you aren't already protected by Firearms Legal Protection or don't have protection at all, then make sure you get protected. And there's also a link for you to let us know what you would like to see in any of our future webinars. I like hearing from you guys and knowing what you want to learn. And I have the 3 that you talked about earlier. I have them noted. But all of our future webinars are on Facebook and YouTube, and we have them all hosted on YouTube. So if you need to watch them later, they're always there for you to watch whenever you want. But thanks again, everyone, for joining tonight. As always, have a great rest of your night. And remember, protect yourself, we'll protect you. Good night.